Let's move along here. If Mr. Pennington comes in. Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'd like to call to order the Town of Abington Planning Commission meeting of April the 26th, 2021. Mr. Boswell, could we have a roll call for attendance purposes, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pennington is absent. Mr. Weaver is also absent. Mr. Anderson?
Present.
Mr. Sproles?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Present.
Mr. Schuman?
Present.
And Mr. Austin?
I am here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. First on our agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to consider. First, March the 22nd of 2021, which is our regular meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review these minutes? Are there any corrections, changes, additions? If not, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion to accept them as provided to you.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, also attached to your agenda are the minutes of the special call meeting of April the 5th of 2021. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? Any changes or modifications to those? Be pleased to hear any motions in regards to those.
I move they be accepted as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Schuman. A second to that motion, please.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All right, at this time, we have a public comment time on our agenda. No one has signed up, I don't believe, for any comments to us tonight. So, hearing none, we will move on to our work session with the Berkeley Group tonight. First of all, they have provided to us a description of what their work has been in regards to this, and I believe we have two representatives here tonight. Very nice to see you, and thank you. If you would give us your name, please, and then we'll be pleased to hear anything you have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kelly Davis. I am with the Berkeley Group. I'm the planning director. And with me here today, I have Mr. John McCoy, who is the staff planner on this project. By way of introduction, the Berkeley Group is a local government consulting firm, and we bring a team of experts that really specialize in local land use planning and zoning. So while John and I are your representatives here tonight, we have a full team of experts that cover things like historic preservation, zoning, environmental resource management, and you have access to a wealth of resources through our entire team at the Berkeley Group. We also wanted to see if, since we don't have name tags up here today, if you would all mind giving us your names by way of introduction, so that we can, and also your job or your regular experience that you bring to the table, since this is our first time meeting with you all, and we will be working with you all for the next 12 or so months through this project.
Mr. Anderson, you want to start with that, please?
Okay, I'm James Anderson. Been on the planning commission for 3 years. I'm also on the town council.
Great, thank you.
I'm Kirk Sproles. Been on the commission, that's the same term as you, 3 years.
Great.
And I'm a banker, been in banking for about 25 years now.
Wonderful, thank you.
My name is Wayne Austin. I'm an attorney here in town. Been practicing here in Abingdon since 1980. Gee, it's a long time. I've been on the planning commission too long. How long is that, Mr. Boswell?
Not long enough, Mr. Austin. We're hoping to keep him for at least another 4 or 5 years.
My name is Kenny Schuman. I am a retired claims manager, and I've been on the planning commission this time around, I think, 3 years.
Wonderful, thank you.
I am Scott Wilson. I'm a civil engineer and I think this is my third year on this, and before that I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals for a while.
Great. Thank you. Just helps us to know your names and got your numbers on there too. So thank you. And with that, I will go ahead and turn the presentation over to John to share with you today.
Is this clicker still the
As far as I
the
know,
driver?
Mr.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much, Commission, to have us here tonight. We're very excited to get this started with you all. Like Kelly said, we bring a whole breadth and depth of expertise and knowledge to share with you and help you as you update your zoning and subdivision ordinance. We've also, if you're probably well aware that we worked on the zoning and subdivision diagnostic last year, so we have been a part here in Abington for at least a year or so, helping you guys out, and we're very excited to be able to just go ahead and get this started. And tonight, I'm going to go over the project intent. Let me change my slide here. There we go. So tonight, I'm going to go over the project overview, including the intent of the project. I'll discuss the schedule and progress to date, including a summary of the public engagement. I believe many of you have already perused the comments in the public survey, so thank you for doing your homework. Following this, we'll turn the discussion focus for tonight. We'll be seeking some of your key direction from you all on zoning districts and zoning district standards. So tonight is really going to be focused on getting some direction from you all, making some proposals, but overall we're wanting to get some direction and feedback from you all as we start to really dive into the ordinance and start drafting some of the different articles for you all. So this is what we've accomplished to date. We kicked the project off with your fantastic town staff on February 9th, just to learn a little bit more about their perspective of how the zoning and subdivision ordinances are working, what could be potentially changed from their point of view. We conducted a review of your existing ordinances and your new comprehensive plan over that month or so. And following this, we met with town council on March 1st to go over the project intent and to learn more about the community's needs. I believe we have a member here tonight who got to see that presentation, so some of these slides might look familiar. We conducted public outreach via an online survey open from March 8th to April 8th. And we also met with stakeholders on April 1st, asking them some specific questions about the ordinances. So today we have our first work session with you all, first of many, focused on districts and district standards. The other items here in blue on the blue table will be the focus items for future work sessions. So tonight we'll be going over district standards, and later on in the presentation I'll go over the next steps, but that will be the focus for future meetings in blue. And then on the green table there will be our adoption. So we're shooting for spring of next year to be able to do the public hearings and to get you a brand new zoning ordinance. So this is our tentative project schedule. Like I said, we'll be meeting with you about every other month. We haven't included the dates just yet, and this will be one of the first guidance items I would like to get from you all. We've included the TBD dates here, and I think, and Kelly, if you have anything to add too, feel free to step in, but I think it'd be best to go ahead and handle the items that we're proposing at your regularly scheduled planning commission meetings. However, I wanted to get some feedback from you all and make sure that that is something you would like to do. We can discuss scheduling additional meetings or special meetings beyond that, but it would probably be best to go ahead and get the work done at your regularly scheduled meetings. So if you have any thoughts or opinions on that, just please let us know if you have any other suggestions otherwise. Sound good?
I would agree, that would be a good time to do it.
Excellent. Everybody else?
Particularly because these meetings are streamed and and if anybody has any interest in them, they are in fact public, so I think that's important.
Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts or feelings on that? The only concern would be if you have a particularly heavy agenda that day with many things that you have to cover. It might be a later evening, but we're happy to do that, and we're happy to work through it as much time as it takes. So if there's no concern or other suggestions, then we'll go ahead and we'll fill out this project schedule for your regularly scheduled meetings moving forward. All right. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page with zoning, I just wanted to go over some of the cans and cannots of zoning. This is something that is typically pretty useful, just working with the public, working with the commission, working with town council, just to make sure we're all on the same page. There's a lot of misconceptions that some people have on what zoning can and can't do as they apply to property. So I think it's useful for us to just go over it right now and make sure we're all on the same page. So what we have here on the slide are the cans and cannots. So zoning can divide land into districts for different uses. That's pretty upfront. That most people understand that. That makes sense. We can regulate the size and type of buildings, require development standards to minimize the impact on other properties, protect sensitive resources from inconsistent or harmful use, enhance community character through some community design standards, and also support affordable housing and economic goals. Those should have check marks next to them, not boxes. I'm not sure why those are boxes, but you can imagine check marks there. Zoning cannot, on the other hand, change or correct land use or buildings that are already in existence. It cannot guarantee that development will occur. So we could zone the entire town R4, but that's not necessarily that there's going to be buildings throughout the entire town dedicated to housing. It cannot assure that land uses will be permanent. It cannot treat similar uses differently within a district, nor can it ensure property is maintained. It also cannot guide public or private investment in infrastructure. So I just wanted to run through those items there and make sure we're all on the same page. And that brings us to the intent of the project. So this is in your packet. We reviewed your zoning and subdivision ordinances last year in our diagnostic that I mentioned earlier. We have discussed some specific needs with town staff and council and have heard recommendations from the public. All these items have developed the project intent. So what we're planning on doing with you all over the next year is to ensure your ordinances comply with state code. We'll work to clarify language, terms, and structure. We'll modernize and streamline the uses where possible. We intend to develop some zoning flexibility to encourage a variety of uses and to maybe move some zoning decisions in-house for staff to address. We'll also revise your subdivision ordinances to comply with state code and to ensure that the town is able to take advantage of land to its fullest. We will also incorporate the subdivision ordinances within the zoning ordinance itself to ensure that's updated as needed along with the zoning ordinance. Additionally, we will revise the ordinances for compatibility with the new comprehensive plan. You got a new comprehensive plan that was made last year, so we'll make sure that your zoning code supports the new comprehensive plan. So finally, this will be a new addition to the ordinances. We're working with LPDA, a landscape and architecture firm, to develop some illustratives that will help explain some of the items in the zoning ordinance. So these will be pictures, drawings, things that people can look to help explain some of the more complicated issues in the zoning ordinance, and hopefully save Jason and Mason some staff time, where they won't have to explain things like setbacks or lot coverage, that type of thing. So we'll be working with that firm to develop some of those items for your zoning ordinance. So a central piece of the project, of course, is engaging the community to learn about Abington's needs and the vision for the future of the town. In this process, we launched an online public survey on March 8th that ran until April 8th, and it pulled in 70 responses. As I said earlier, you've already had the opportunity to review those results, but they can be seen in attachment B in your packet. We also held stakeholder interviews and a public workshop on April 1st. The stakeholder interviews involved 4 groups and a total of 10 participants who represented a wide range of community members, including developers, business owners, real estate agents, and others. You can see a summary of those conversations in attachment C as well. The public workshop, though well advertised, it was advertised on Facebook, I believe, Jason, you mentioned it was all of your social media, on the town blog, etc. It was unfortunately a little poorly attended. We had 2 folks show up to that. So rather than the planned exercise, which would have broke big groups down to smaller ones and work with them, we worked with them directly to go over the questions that we had that night. So it ended up working well, but we had to pivot on that item there. So moving forward, these are the public survey results. They're a bit of a high-level summary, and I'll get into some of the specific results after that. These are themes that ran across multiple answers and between multiple respondents. First was a desire to improve community appearance, especially along major streets and entrance corridors. Next was to improve the quality of business development outside the historic downtown. Respondents also wanted to maintain open space in rural areas where possible. People really love their open space in rural areas and didn't want to see those gone, but were a little split on how to do that. There was also interest in providing a greater variety of housing as well as preserving the historic areas. So again, a full summary is in attachment B. So as you can see here, preserving historic areas and encouraging new commercial businesses were the top priorities for respondents, followed closely by improving community appearance. Other answers included a desire to see infill development that matches community character and design, protecting residential areas from other uses, and conserving sensitive environmental areas. I've also included this chart as it provides an understanding of some focus areas of improvement in the town. You You can see that a plurality of survey respondents were dissatisfied with the development along major streets and entrance corridors, and that's something that we heard in stakeholder interviews as well. Some of this may be addressed by zoning, possibly by implementing new community design standards or easing development standards in business areas. You can also see in this chart that a majority of respondents are generally satisfied with development in residential neighborhoods, the historic downtown, and in agricultural areas. So results from the stakeholder interviews, well, before I get into the stakeholder interviews, are there any questions or anything you'd like to discuss from the public survey? I don't think it necessarily uncovered anything that was surprising to anybody. I don't think there's anything that was out of left field in terms of the public survey and what the community wanted to see. And it will provide some guidance and some of the community design standards we'll be proposing. So overall, I think it was well responded. We got some good feedback and some interesting comments as well. So if there's anything you'd like to ask or go over, feel free to stop me anytime. So results from the stakeholder interviews and public workshop results kind of provided a deeper view of community needs. These are a little more targeted to provide a little more of a clear picture. So we heard a desire to revise the old historic district to allow more consistent treatment across your 15 sub-districts, and we'll have a conversation about that later tonight as well. We also heard a desire to ensure the zoning ordinance is flexible to meet current and future needs, as well as simple enough to understand. So people wanted to revise and allow some additional uses that currently aren't allowed, as well as being simple enough for the layman to pick up and understand the zoning ordinance. We also heard a desire to modify the subdivision ordinance to be a little less burdensome to developers, and a desire to encourage new housing types with a key focus on affordable housing, and also a desire to guarantee consistent treatment across new developments regarding variances, applications, and approvals. And that will bring us to our first kind of decision tonight. So I'll stop here. If there's anything you'd like to go over or questions you'd like to ask from the public engagement period, I'm happy to answer them now. But if there's not, I'll move right along. All right. Again, at any point, if there's something that pops in your head you'd like a little more clarity on or understanding with the full summaries or in your attachments, but I'd be happy to. So this, like I said, it brings us to our first decision item. So your current ordinance has a large list of articles. We propose consolidating many of these articles into the 11 that you see here. I think you have 26 articles, if I'm not mistaken. This is the general format we've used in other localities that seems to work very well. Article 1 in general will contain the authority, purpose, and applicability sections of your ordinance. Article 2, administration, will contain the official zoning map, procedures for amending that zoning map, the duties and responsibilities of the zoning administrator and planning commission, BZA, violations and appeals. Following this is permits and applications, which will cover your zoning permits, special use permits, site plan review, etc. Article 4 will be your zoning districts, so that will define and go into the uses, or it won't go into the uses, but it will define the intent and establishment of those zoning districts. Article 5, special and overlay zoning districts will house districts that have other implications for land use that don't quite fit within the typical districts. So we see that as your downtown arts and culture district, potentially the planned technology district, the flood hazard district, and the airport safety overlay districts. Next is Article 6, which defines the uses allowed by right and special use permit in each district. Following this will be your use performance standards. Article 7, which provides additional standards for special uses in each district. It may include the number of uses allowed per parcel, the hours of allowed operations, etc. Article 8 will contain your community design standards. So these are items like your landscaping, lighting, parking, and signage, and will define these standards by district. Article 9 will contain your non-conforming uses, lots, and structures. Article 10 is a bit of a bigger change. It involves taking your existing subdivision ordinance and folding it into the zoning ordinance. We haven't gotten to this piece just yet, but we will be reviewing your subdivision ordinance against state code and revising it as needed to correct anything that isn't working well for the town. Placing the subdivision ordinance as an article within the zoning ordinance ensures the subdivision ordinance is a part of future updates as well. And then last but not least will be your definitions, and this will be a focus for the next meeting. We'll be using a few different sources to pull together your definitions, including some of your current definitions, definitions straight from state code, definitions from a planner's dictionary, and some other definitions we us to move ahead with these proposed ordinance structures. You should have your existing zoning ordinance articles in front of you if you'd like to review those. But like I said, this is one that we typically use in other localities, and it seems to work well. So we propose using this, but if there are changes, we'd be happy to take a look and revise those.
Do you think that as a result of doing this, that what the end point will be a more concise document than what we have now?
Yes, sir. I think it will be more concise without losing any of the information that makes your zoning ordinance work. We'll be really taking a look at the existing ordinance and seeing what areas will fit within these articles here, just to make sure we're not missing or leaving anything out. But I think as it is now, all your zoning districts are currently as their own articles, so folding them into one article will allow for ease of use. You can thumb to zoning districts and see what's allowed in R3, for example. So yes, I do think this will be more concise and will provide an easier use for anybody who needs to use it.
Well, I like in what you proposed, the idea of, as opposed to just saying R3, that you would define what it is so that immediately you would know rather than just having a number and a letter.
Absolutely, you're getting ahead of me, but that's one item that we'll discuss, I think, after this one too. That's absolutely. Any other thoughts on this proposed ordinance structure? I know this one is kind of a dry topic. I'm open to suggestions or revisions, but if you're comfortable with this, we'll move forward on these items, and making sure that we're not missing anything from your current ordinance. And we really think that this will be a better use for anyone that needs to use the ordinance. So, all right, I'll move ahead with the assumption that this is what we're working towards. So now that that's settled, we'll turn into our zoning districts more specifically. Here is your zoning map. It's a little cut off, but it provides the gist of what you're looking at in the town. You see a good mix here with your agricultural, forestal, and open space districts, mostly sticking to the outer boundary of the town. You also see your business districts are mostly along major routes, and your existing residential districts located throughout. So you've got your R1 through R4 residential, your planned unit development, B1 through B3, OI is office and institutional. Your old and historic district is there in the lime green in the middle. Your planned technology district, and then your limited industrial districts. So they're pretty standard. These are what we see in a lot of communities. I just wanted to provide a view for you all here in case you haven't seen it recently. And when I take a moment just to ensure that we're on the same page, again, when I refer to zoning district standards, these are the items that are defined by district and refer to items such as the allowed height of buildings, the setbacks from the road, maximum lot coverage if applicable, and other standards that control how a lot can be developed. We'll be reviewing and making some revisions to these as the process goes on, just to make sure that your ordinance is working well. And these are the kinds of images you'll see in the illustrative piece of your zoning ordinance that will help explain some of these items to people who are trying to understand how high their building can be built or their setbacks. These aren't the exact ones that will be in there, but they convey the same information. So this brings us to our first key policy directions on zoning districts. There are 3 topics here that we plan to discuss tonight. And again, I want to get your feedback and understanding and direction on these. So the first item will be to revise the district names of your residential districts, adding intent statements to districts that currently don't have any, and making some revisions to those that do. And then finally, discussing a consolidation of some of your old historic sub-districts. So our first item here, it was given away a little bit earlier, but that's fine, is potentially involves a renaming of your residential districts. So as you can see here, your residential districts are nameless besides the numbering designation, R1, R2, R3, and R4. In our opinion, renaming these districts will lend a greater understanding and clarity to staff and users of the ordinance when developments occur. We propose naming these districts to reflect the type and intensity of the uses allowed there, as well as the character of the current district. So for example, R1 would become low density, R2 would become medium density, R3 becomes high density, and R4 becomes mixed residential. We propose naming R4 mixed residential to encompass the variety of secondary residential uses allowed in the district, as well as the inclusion of manufactured homes subdivisions by SUP. So renaming these districts, there's not too many downsides to this. We just want to make sure that you're on board with this, and we can wordsmith the proposed titles if needed. But we feel that this will provide a little better ease of understanding for those who may be using the ordinance. And the lovely staff member Mason drove us around today to give an idea of what some of these districts look like, and you have a wide variety of housing, especially in your R3 and R4 districts. So we think that these will provide a little better understanding, and like I said, if there's some changes, I would be happy to amend those as needed. But what are your general feelings on renaming these districts to low, medium, high, and mixed?
Well, John, I want to thank you for actually getting Mason to do something. So, I really
Absolutely, no trouble
appreciate
at all.
that.
He's a go-getter. He drove us everywhere.
I have no problem with
No, I
that
don't.
personally.
Okay. Is there any concerns or thoughts or questions you may have on anything? Great. Okay, well then we'll move forward with these proposed titles just to better clarify the uses that are allowed there. I think it will really serve to benefit your ordinance. So our next discussion topic involves intent statements. So many of your current zoning districts don't have any. And these explain the purpose of the zoning districts, so 10, 20, or 30 years down the road, Mr. Boswell, or whoever is in his position, doesn't have to look at the ordinance and ponder why something was allowed there or why it wasn't allowed there. On another practical note, establishing these intent statements can provide a little legal backbone for the decisions that you make as a planning commission on allowing variances or zoning permits, that type of thing. So, and from our own perspective, while reviewing the zoning ordinance, it has been a little difficult to understand why some uses are allowed and some aren't, especially in the business districts due to a lack of those intent statements. So we proposed some intent statements that we developed using guidance from your new comprehensive plan, the existing character of development within those districts, and the desired future land use in each district. I'd refer you to attachment E, which goes over those new intent statements to a fuller degree than I will right here on the slide. And I think it'll be best if for each district, we just go down the line and make a decision as to whether you agree with those changes or you agree with the intent of those. So the first one we'd start with is the agricultural, forestal, and open space district, which we have provided an intent statement there as it's currently denied. And so, as I move to that attachment, like I said, it currently does not have an intent statement, but what we have drafted is the purpose of the AFOS, Agricultural, Forestal, and Open Space District, is to preserve the rural character of areas where agricultural, forestry, and other low-intensity uses predominate. The district also provides open space and agricultural production, uses that enhance the physical resources of the town and provide recreational opportunities for residents. So are there any changes or thoughts or feelings on amending that?
No.
Does that seem like a pretty decent for an AFOS district? Okay. I'll make a note of that then. And if there's anything that pops in your head later on after this meeting's done, if there's word changes that you don't like, feel free to pass them along and we'll try to work them in and incorporate them into the intent statements. So our next one will be our R1 district. This one's a little lengthier, but the purpose of the R1 low density residential district is to provide appropriate areas for low-density single-family development. The district is designed to preserve the character of existing residential areas, to encourage new residential development in accordance with modern subdivision standards, to protect single-family areas from encroachment by potentially incompatible commercial land uses and other high-density development, and to maintain an appropriate density of development. The R1 district is also intended to accommodate limited non-residential uses necessary to meet the recreational, educational, cultural, and public service needs of a residential community. And like I said, we developed these by taking a look at your comprehensive plan and looking at the typical character and uses allowed in those districts as well.
I like the portion in the middle where it's talking about prohibiting encroachment by potentially incompatible commercial land uses, other higher density development. I think that's a problem that we see in areas where we see industrial uses or perhaps commercial uses more so in Abingdon, beginning to encroach on residential areas and properties. And there's always gonna be areas where those meet, and we need to have an intent statement along those lines to help us where those two districts would meet.
Okay.
And I looked at the list of actually what those would allow, and I think that the list is good, because you are gonna have certain things that will encroach but be part of the neighborhood, whether it's a park or a school or something like that. And I think those are listed pretty well.
Okay, so the actual allowed uses in the district you feel are appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts? Great. Hearing none, I'll move on to the R2 district. I know this is a little tedious and a little wordy, so I think it's good to go ahead and establish these intent statements. It'll help us drive amendments to the uses later on, and making sure that we're all on the same page with what these districts will look like in the future. So, R2 here. The purpose of the R2 medium-density residential district is to encompass medium-density residential areas, both existing and planned, as well as certain compatible public and semi-public land uses. This district should provide a suitable environment for a mix of housing types located in closer proximity to shopping and employment centers. I see some nods of approval. Any considerations or anything we may have missed?
None.
Alright, hearing none, we'll move on to our R3 district. So the purpose of this district, R3 high-density residential, is to encourage a diversity in housing opportunities at higher densities, as well as certain compatible public and semi-public land uses. This district should provide a high-quality residential environment in areas that have excellent transportation access and are well-served by public water and sewer utilities. See some nods. Nobody seems opposed to anything so far, so I think that's a good sign.
You're doing great, John.
Thank you. Mr. Boswell?
Well, I think this is a framework that, you know, is so general at this point in time, it just needs to be stated, but I don't think that specifically, I personally don't have a lot of input into it until we work our way down
Okay.
in other work sessions.
Okay. Well then, as a better use of time, I can, move forward, I can fast forward, so we're not going through all the R districts and business districts. I just wanted to provide an opportunity for you all to voice any strong opinions that you had or guidance.
I do want to talk a little bit about when you get to the old historic. There's some points I would like to make about that when you get there.
Okay, absolutely. Well, if that seems to be the consensus, I can fast forward. If there's something that you feel strongly about, please feel free to stop me right here, but I was gonna go through the intent statements. If you're fine with me moving ahead, I'll do that. And you can send comments to Jason, he can pass them along to us if you have any issues or concerns with those intent statements. Like you all said, this won't be the last time we'll be seeing these, and, you know, we can make note and make some changes at future, planning commission meetings. We'll be seeing a lot of each other over the next year, so it won't be the last time we'll be able to review these. So I'll move forward then. Doesn't hurt my feelings at all. On slide 18 here, so we will make revisions to the proposed intent statements, as recommended. And the next item to discuss is the consolidation of the old historic subdistricts. So currently, you've got 15 subdistricts in the old historic district. Some are contiguous, while some are not. We've heard from staff, town council, stakeholders, and our own zoning and subdivision diagnostic that there is a need to consolidate some of these subdistricts. So typically, old and historic districts in our experience are done as overlay districts, but we've heard as an immense pride in the community that the old historic district is its own physical district, and so we're not really proposing to make that change to convert that into an overlay district. Right now, we have relatively few differences in the uses allowed in sub-districts and a few explanations as to the reasoning for some of those decisions. So for example, here on your screen, you'll see sub-districts 3 and 4 are on either side, Subdistrict 3 is on south of Main Street, whereas Subdistrict 4 is the north part of Main Street. They have the same external bounds. The only difference between the two is that Subdistrict 4 allows courthouses and neighborhood parks, whereas Subdistrict 3 does not. I'm not proposing necessarily to consolidate those two, but that is an option and consideration to make, as a lot of these districts have the same uses or similar uses allowed. So consolidation would allow a more equal treatment of uses across the districts, which is something that we've heard in the public outreach. It will ease some of the administrative burden for your town staff and can promote some greater variety in the development within these districts. So tonight, I just want to see your interest in consolidating these districts. We would probably propose paring the districts down from 15 to roughly 5 while leaving some of those non-contiguous parcels as their own sub-districts. So on this slide here are your districts. So we would probably consolidate these 15 down to about 5 while leaving number 15 there on the end as its own standalone district, as well as number 12. And we'd have to take a look at 13 and 14 and see if there's something that we could do there. But options for, and these are just suggestions, so just something to think about for consolidation, include 3 and 4, like I just said. They allow the same uses except for neighborhood parks and courthouses, and they're bisected by Main Street. Subdistricts 5 and 6 could be consolidated into one district. 5 allows churches, home occupation, professional studios, and restaurants, while 6 does not. 6 is this purple, if you can see it on the end. It might be a little small for you all, but it's this kind of pink small square to the left side of the western part of town. It's bounded by Plum Alley and West Main Street, similarly to number 5. It kind of appears, at least looking on the online GIS, that 6 is roughly a single block containing Rico's Restaurant, Moonflower Montessori, and a couple of small shops contained in one small building, just to give you an idea of where you're at in town. Another option is consolidating those districts on the back end of Valley Street, 9, 10, 7, and 11. They're mostly residential. There are some changes in some of the uses allowed in those districts. So we want to take a look and make sure we're not proposing anything in a residential district that wouldn't be appropriate for that area. So these are examples of some of the changes that you could make that we can work with you all to adjust. We would need to take a look, like I said, at some of these different consolidations, but it would be an ease of burden for your administration, save your town staff from having to explain why a restaurant is allowed on one end of the street, not the other, and would also provide some equity in uses. So tonight we just want to see what your opinion is on consolidating some of these districts, see if there's any approval or disapproval for that.
What would constitute an old and historic district?
Can you explain further? Like, are you
With,
curious?
like age or?
So right now there are some standards, I believe, in your architectural review board and your historical district standards there. Some of these districts, they're not necessarily aligned with the state's historic districts. So from our understanding, some of these lines are a little blurry and there's a little, we're not really sure why it was included in the historic district, why this use wasn't, or this building wasn't, but this one was. So we're working with town staff and with the public to better understand maybe that piece. But it is kind of hard to justify why some are and some are not. And we'll be taking a look at consolidating within the districts. And it's a little outside the scope of our project here to expand or contract the actual bounds of it. But that is potentially something we can discuss with town staff if needed.
Yeah, I think one thing about that is, and I would like to see some of the uses consolidated. Also, we have in odd places buildings that aren't part of it that are in the district geographically, so they probably should be included. I think I go back to why this was done, and some of it was done as a result of an attempt to change the district and make it more residential at a time when there was a concern about offices coming in, and that's why you have certain things in certain districts. And what was done was, basically, you looked at a district and said, oh, well, if there's a restaurant already in that district, restaurants will be allowed, or school, or whatever it was. One of the things that would concern me, and I think at the time, was certain older homes don't suit themselves to restaurants, for example, particularly if they're in the middle of an area, and that was true with parking as well. So, I mean, I think it's important to do that, and to consolidate as much as possible, but I do think there are uses within some of those blocks that just don't make sense.
Okay.
What's happened since then, though, is exactly opposite of what I think people thought would happen at the time. And what's happened is that area, the whole historic district, has become probably more residential than business, just as a result of things that have happened. There were some bed and breakfasts that are now homes, offices that are homes, that type of thing. The other thing that is a concern to me as we're talking about that is when we talk about how the Historic Review Board is constituted and what it does. Because one of the things that concerns me is not only what the uses are and how you determine what the use should be and how you approach the Old and Historic Review Board, but also what they can do to make sure that homes in the historic district are actually preserved, because we tend to have a real difference in, you got some people who will come and have everything approved, and then you'll have some buildings that are obviously somewhat dilapidated. And I, 2 years ago, I guess 2019, late 2018, the Economic Development Authority actually did a survey of businesses, mostly locally owned businesses, about a wide array of things. But one of the things that was identified was that the Old and Historic District, because it wasn't well, because you couldn't force people to maintain their homes, that actually it was an impediment to development. And that was the result of that, is that there are certain buildings there that aren't maintained, and at the same time, there are very strict regulations when somebody comes before the board to ask to have some modification to their property.
Okay. Yeah, no, that can be a difficult situation, provide some roadblocks for people that have, good intentions and want to redevelop something, and that's something we heard in the public survey as well, and the stakeholder interviews, that some of the standards are a little too strict. We can look into them, and we intend to do that. In terms of existing development, it is hard to apply new standards to existing development, but we'll try to work our best to see what we can do to maybe streamline.
That would be important to me personally. I did, in reading some of the responses, some of them were exactly opposite, which is, was to me a little bit humorous. You had people who said, gosh, we got to preserve all those old houses, and then you had one or two that say, that thing is old, just tear it down.
Yeah, no, we see a lot of the surveys and a lot of the public, they have different intents and different mind frames on some of these things. So, we heard from stakeholders that they'd like to see a greater balance between residential and business, while some of the public survey results indicated keeping things more residential or keeping things business. So, there is a wide array of what people want, and we're trying to make sure that we don't make anybody particularly mad.
Well, at some point in some of those things, and you can see, like I say, how it's changed, is I think that one time there was a view that it was going to become almost all offices. And that has, really not happened. And I can say just from personal, I live in the Old Historic District, so my home is there, but at one time we also owned a building that was my wife's office. So, at some point, I think the real issue is maintenance of the buildings, and if an office or somebody who has a business is going to maintain a house as it should be in the Old Historic District, that would be more important to me than a specific use to say, well, you can't have an office there.
Okay. That's good feedback. Thank you for that. So like we said, we just wanted to kind of get some guidance and feedback from you all tonight. If this is something that you would like us to look further into, we can come back to the next meeting with some proposals of consolidations of some of these districts, working with your town staff, of course, to make sure we're not proposing anything off the wall. It seems like I see some nods, so if that's the case, then that's what we'll do. We'll move forward on maybe making some consolidations to the old historic districts. And later on, we'll get into uses as well, so you'll probably have a little better of a frame of mind and a clearer picture of what might be allowed and what might not be.
Now, one of the things that happened in this old discussion was that if there were uses that weren't part of the district, that if that use was abandoned over 2 years, then that use was not allowed in the district. And I think that some of that has actually happened.
Okay.
You know, there was a dry cleaning business that's gone, and now it's a yoga studio, but it's not been a dry cleaning business for several years, so that wouldn't be approved in the district once it's abandoned.
Okay, yeah, it becomes a non-conforming use. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll move forward on that, and we'll take a look at some of the districts and make sure that we're getting you what you need. So the next kind of key items for our discussion tonight are zoning district standards. This brings us to this next set of items. The first item involves the Old Historic District again. Item 2 is to get some feedback on a proposed reduction of lot area standards to achieve affordable housing goals. And then the third item there is just if anything has popped up tonight, or if you have anything else you'd like to bring up at the end. So without further ado, I'll get right into it. So each district in Abington has district standards like what we discussed earlier today for setbacks, building height, frontage, and lot area. In some cases that is a specific number, and in others it might just be that there is no setback or no frontage required. The Old Historic District standards for development are what you see on the slide here. The development shall follow the general established pattern already in existence in the district insofar as area, setback, frontage, yard, and height regulations are concerned. So that's a little vague, but from what we've heard from staff is that this really hasn't been too much of an issue, and before we wanted to make a mountain out of a molehill, we just wanted to see if there's any interest on your end to maybe develop some additional dimensional standards for the sub-districts, for the Old Historic District itself, just to help guide some development in those areas. We've also heard that there aren't a ton of lots left to be developed in the old historic districts anyways. But there's also always the potential with some vague language for headaches or legal concerns. So this vague language could come back and be a little bit of a concern later on if somebody wants to propose a development that you don't like, or it doesn't seem to fit into the character of the existing neighborhoods there. So the Old Historic District Design Guidelines are also similarly mum on additional standards, generally saying the same thing here, that development should follow the existing character of surrounding development. We see this as an item of improvement in this district and one in which we can develop those dimensional standards. So we just wanted to get an idea from you all here tonight to see if there's a desire for us to go down this route, to maybe propose some additional standards, or in the case that it's been working so far, you don't want us to really mess around with it. We just wanted to get some guidance from you all tonight. And Jason, if there's anything I've missed or if anything you want to add, feel free to.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, John. I will add that, as you all know, I mean, we had one residential structure added to the Valley Street. That was the last really developable lot on Valley. We're dealing with the courthouse, obviously, which hasn't been an issue insofar as area or lot coverage or anything. They've been willing to work with the established pattern. So this hasn't really given staff any heartache or heartburn now, but I may not always be around, and just want to make sure that you all are aware that the language is vague, but there really aren't any developable lots. And I don't see the HPRB allowing demo of any structures anytime soon. The Elliott Building was one of those rare situations. There was no historical value to that structure to begin with, so that's kind of where staff's at on the situation.
Kelly, is there anything that I missed that you think would help serve the conversation? I'll step to the side.
The only thing that I would say is if you want us to explore this particular issue, I think the next step would be to take that particular clause to the town attorney, see if he has any concern over vagueness associated with it. It's just an initial flag that as we were looking through dimensional standards, we wanted to bring to staff, to the town attorney, and just make sure that the feeling is that this is all right, considering you have the architectural review board standards. We were even just doing a little more research on this today. There was a court case in Vienna, and some language was okay, even though it was brought for we need to do some more research, but that would be my next step if you're interested in it, just taking it to the town attorney and verifying that this, whether he can give us some direction on whether or not he wants us to look into this too. That would be an alternative path.
I personally would ask you to do that.
Absolutely.
That would matter to me.
I think it's worthy of doing it. At least we may ultimately decide we don't want to move in that direction, but let's take a look at it at this point in time.
Okay. We can do that. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you, Jason, as well.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll do that. We'll do a little more research into the vagueness of the standards and see if there's other language we could propose, and we'll work with the town attorney as well to see if there's any issue there. So our next policy direction item is in regards to lot area standards for your R3 and R4 districts. We heard from community members, both in the survey and stakeholder interviews, that a lack of affordable housing is a concern in the community. And while there isn't one foolproof solution to encourage the development of affordable housing, one method of doing so is to allow some more dense housing development. This was mentioned in the stakeholder interviews and is supported in your comprehensive plan. While the comprehensive plan suggested density in the high-density residential districts is 6 to 16 units per acre, we did a little bit of math, and it seems that Abingdon allows up to 15 units per acre currently in your R3 and R4 districts for residential units. So I've included this slide here to give you an understanding of what other similar communities are doing with their lot area standards. And of course, before we were to propose a specific number, we would definitely want to take a look and make sure that your neighborhoods would not be too adversely affected by denser development, and if it would be suitable in those districts. But this is something that popped up as a potential for addressing affordable housing, and something that we can take a look into if you would like us to do that. So Benton, where I'm from, that's why I've included it there, has a maximum density not to exceed 24 units per acre. The population there is a little higher than Abingdon, but it's a similar small town as well. Radford also allows 24 units per acre, and Blacksburg's a little strange. They do theirs by bedrooms, which would make sense with Virginia Tech there. So we just wanted to get some direction from you all here to see if you'd like to see denser development in those R3 and R4 districts to achieve affordable housing goals. We can take a look, like I said, and see if it's appropriate in these districts. What are do you have general thoughts or concerns about that right now tonight?
I'd like to look at options for sure. I think that was mentioned in the comprehensive plan because
Yes, sir.
that's an issue that Nathan Berg has brought up, I think, on occasion.
Yes, sir.
So,
And I believe he was one of the members of
Yeah,
the
and
stakeholder interviews
right.
that brought this up as well. So, and it is something that came up in your comprehensive plan, was to allow more dense development to achieve affordable housing goals. And this is actually the recommendations here for high density residential. So we can take a look and see, crunch the numbers and see if there's ways that we can improve density or increase density if you'd like us to do that.
yeah,
Okay. General consensus there. All right, and that's kind of our last policy direction item. Were there other items that you all wanted to discuss or wanted to bring up to us tonight to look into in next meetings, make sure that we're not missing anything, or if there's personal items you would like us to look into, we would be happy to hear them now.
one thing, and I don't know if it's been discussed, but it goes back 5, maybe a few, is that not like R3 or R4, but the town did at one time develop district overlays so that it would say, like, for example, this is the theater district, there was the Falcon district. I don't know if you still have that, but
I haven't
it
seen
doesn't
that.
really necessarily apply, but I thought when it was done, it had some merit because it helped in terms of pointing out where things were.
I'll take a look and.
It's been
Yeah.
you get to be a certain age and some of these things, like they happened about 2 weeks ago and it was
Yeah.
20 years,
Yeah,
that.
I totally
But,
understand that, Mr.
but I know that was done at one time, and I think it did have some merit in terms, not of R3, R4 type things, but in terms of directional areas. And it.
I'll take a look and see
yeah.
if we can find anything in our files. But I think you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah, I know Ramsey White was on the planning commission at that time, but I can't remember who all else.
Yeah. I'll take a look and see if I can find it.
Think the other items or areas that you'd like us to focus on as we move ahead?
Not for me.
All right. Well, on that note, these will be the next steps. So we'll review some of the recommendations we talked about tonight and incorporate some decisions. In our next meeting, we will include revised district standards, the use matrix, definitions, and overlay and special districts. So come prepared for that meeting there. That'll be a bigger decision-making meeting as well. So without further ado, if you have comments or suggestions or concerns, we'd encourage you to pass them along to Mr. Boswell, and he'll forward them on to us for consideration for the drafting of the articles. But that is all I have for you tonight. Kelly, is there anything you'd like to add, or? All right, anything from you all tonight? Again, one last opportunity to bring anything up. Otherwise, I'll take my seat, and I definitely appreciate the time, and thank you for your direction, and we're looking forward to revising the articles and moving ahead on making a fantastic zoning ordinance for you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate each of you for being here tonight.
Absolutely, we appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if I need to press a button on that, Mr. Boswell, to close out that presentation.
I got you, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
gentlemen.
All right, left on our agenda tonight is matters that are not on the agenda or announcements. It was brought to our attention a moment ago. We may have an issue concerning our next meeting. We said that was scheduled for May 24th.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that's
Okay.
correct.
I know that I will be out of town. Mr. Schuman indicated that he would be out of town. Should we change the date of that meeting, or?
I'll leave that up to you and the commission, sir. Staff is definitely available any day that you choose if you do want to reschedule.
The 31st is actually a holiday, but if people were here,
What holiday is it, Mr.?
it's Memorial Day, isn't it?
The town,
31st?
the town will be closed that day.
That's what I was.
Yeah, so I won't be here for that one, Mr. Schuman. I'm gonna take my holiday.
We could have a meeting and surprise you.
Maybe I missed something. You weren't suggesting we have a meeting on a holiday.
Yes, he would.
Sounded like it.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Austin. Mr. Austin, when you're retired, every day.
Well, I'm not there yet, so it's not. We would still have a quorum if Mr. Schuman and I weren't here.
We would, yes, sir, and I believe
Appoint a
that,
temporary chair.
I feel that Mr. Wilson, I think, is the most senior person on
Okay.
the.
I mean, that'd be fine, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't get anything, for the agenda, we would just go ahead and cancel it.
Sure.
Yeah,
That would be the 24th.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
I can
just
be here.
continue
You can
as
be here, Mr.
scheduled.
Sproul.
yeah.
Is that okay?
I'll take up your slack, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I knew you had my back.
Oh, yeah.
We'll just continue as scheduled.
We'll
then.
continue as scheduled. If I don't get anything by, I think the application deadline is, hold on one second, let me check my calendar. Application deadline is the 10th. If we don't get anything by the 10th, I'll let everybody know
Okay.
that the meeting will be canceled.
Do you know of anything on the horizon?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Good, good. All right, what other matters do we need to discuss tonight? Anything else? Be pleased to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make some motion.
So made. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.